So today I will be presenting the apartheid era in South Africa. Let me first talk about what apartheid means. Apartheid is a policy of segregation and economic and political discrimination that was present in South Africa from 1948 to about 1994. The apartheid era in South Africa is most known, but the term can also be used to describe what happened in the United States, in Australia, Rhodesia, and kind of what some argue is happening in Israel today. The term originates from Afrikaans, which means separateness. Afrikaans is the language that came from Dutch settlers in South Africa. Let me give you a little background about South Africa as a country. It was originally a Dutch colony, and the British, when they realized that there were valuable minerals and diamonds there, they came in as well and colonized part of the country. The two European countries had a kind of tense power sharing, and there were a lot of conflicts and wars between these two countries up until in 1948 when the Dutch political party came into power, and that was the Afrikaner National Party. This party mainly was able to come into power because they supported apartheid and everyone voted for them. The initial aim of apartheid was to maintain white superiority and to further separate groups of people based on their race. There are two different types of apartheid. Petty apartheid is what came into being during the 1948 election. That's separation of whites and blacks on buses, hospitals, schools, bathrooms. And what happened during the 50s is grand apartheid. This was the physical separation of different groups based on their race. People living in different areas, not being able to live where they chose. The apartheid was comprised of different laws and acts that happened. There were so many, but the most important ones that really defined it are the ones I'm going to be talking about. One of them was the Population Registration Act of 1950. This stated that all South Africans must carry a passbook stating whether they are black, white, mixed race, or, and another category that was later added was Indian or Pakistani. These were also known as Dom books, Dom meaning dumb, because they were often inaccurate. A person could be, it was said that they were white. The person making them a passbook would issue a passbook saying that they were white. It could then be changed to mixed, then back to white again, then back to mixed. These things were extremely flawed and unfair. They were designed to control and restrict the movement of black South Africans. And it's an estimate is that during the later years of the apartheid, every 2.5 seconds, someone was arrested for not having a passbook on them. Second series of acts were known as the Land Acts. In 1913, before the apartheid, only 7.5% of the land was allowed to black South Africans. And during this time, there were 19 million blacks in the country and only 4 million whites. The percentage was later made to about 10%, but still, it's ridiculous. Let me also specify that it's not like all whites and blacks got along before the apartheid. It was still unfair, and still whites were superior and had more of the money and more of the land and controlled the government, but they weren't physically separated living in different areas yet. That didn't happen until the Group Areas Act was established in 1950. This act stated that the 4 different races had to live in different areas of the country, and these were known as townships. I'm going to talk about what they are now. They're also known as homelands. These different regions separated people according to race. So as you can see, whites had most of the country and most of the arable land, blacks and mixed race and Indians lived in the driest land with the worst living conditions. And this is an example of what a black township looked like during the 1950s. It was basically a slum, a ghetto, and people were not allowed to leave their township without a passbook, and they could only leave if they were working for whites outside of their township. There are different series of rebellions during the apartheid. There are really too many to count, but from my research I gained that the two most important ones were the Sharpeville Massacre and the Soweto Uprising. First I'll talk about the Sharpeville Massacre that happened in 1960. This was organized by the ANC, the African National Committee. And it was over 5,000 blacks presenting themselves at the Sharpeville Township police station without their passbooks, basically giving themselves in for arrest. This was a completely peaceful protest. No one was armed, but the white police opened fire, killing 69 blacks and injuring about 180. This event was really historically significant because it brought attention to the injustices that were going on that the world knew not very much about. The second important uprising that happened after what is known as the Decade of Silence, when not many rebellions occurred, it happened just outside of Johannesburg, and over the span of a few days, over 20,000 students took the streets protesting the fact that Afrikaans was made the language that students would be educated in. It'd be as if we're learning in English now, and all of a sudden the government decided that we were going to learn everything in German, and all of our classes, all of our tests were going to be taught in this new language. They were really against this because Afrikaans was also viewed as the language of the oppressor. It was the language of the white Dutch who were controlling them and not allowing them to do as they please, and making them live in these tiny areas and not having the same rights as white people had. This really is what brought a lot of attention to South Africa. This led to many college students protesting in America and in the United Kingdom and standing outside of universities and making kind of replicas of what Black Township would look like at the time. The symbol of the Soweto Uprising is a girl named Antoinette carrying her dead younger brother out from the masses, and she's known as a hero today. I'm going to talk about Nelson Mandela because he was such an important figure in ending the apartheid, and he's really kind of the face of the apartheid and an anti-apartheid revolutionary. There were different people who played a big role in ending the apartheid, but it's arguably the most important. He spent over 27 years in prison, basically for illegitimate causes. He was arrested for inciting peaceful rebellions and for trying to leave the country. He was able to become president of South Africa in 1994 in the first democratic multiracial election. And his presidency kind of marks the end of apartheid, his becoming president. Another important political figure at the time was the successor to Nelson Mandela, and he was president of South Africa from 1989 to 1994. For his efforts and Nelson Mandela's efforts, they received the 1993 Nobel Peace Prize for basically ending the apartheid era. The apartheid would not have been able to end, however, without the efforts of the international community. Students and other protesters everywhere urged for institutions and governments to divest, to stop investing in South Africa and South African goods. This put so much economic pressure on South Africa that it factored into the end of the apartheid. South Africa was expelled from the International Olympic Movement. They were excluded from playing in many of the Olympic Games. And you may be wondering, why didn't the international community intervene earlier? Why didn't they come in during the 60s or 70s? And the reason is, as we learned, the Cold War was going on at the time. And South Africa was kind of seen as a bulwark against communism. And if they were helping to end the apartheid, then they feared that the Russians would come in and spread their influence. South Africa today, its apartheid era is over, obviously, and there's many people who are very wealthy. There's a prosperous middle class, but a lot of the country still lives below the poverty line. Many live under $1 a day. The homelands themselves are no longer homelands where only black people allowed to live, but they're still slums. They still basically look the same as they did during the apartheid era. And I think you guys have probably heard of the Black Empowerment movement and giving black people jobs to repay for all the injustices that they suffered. But as a result, many black people who aren't really qualified have high positions and are making more money, and it's really an imbalance in the country. Like other African countries, there's still a lot of corruption, and the sad truth is that power corrupts people, white or black. Power corrupts people, white or black, and this corruption of black in leadership is leading South Africans to kind of question the direction in which their country is going. Thank you.